with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the first speaker. The first presentation is called Human-Animal Teaming as a Model for Effective Human-AI Robot Teams. And that is given by Dr. Heather Lum. Dr. Heather Lum is Assistant Professor and Director of the Virtual Environments and Cognitive Training Research VECTA Lab at Arizona State University. She earned her PhD in Applied Experimental and Human Factor Psychology from the University of Central Florida in 2011. Her primary research interest centers on human technology interactions broadly with a more specific focus on human non-human teaming. She also serves as an Associate Director for the Center of Human, AI, and Robot Teaming at ASU. In addition to her research pursuits, Dr. Lum is a canine handler and training coordinator and a training evaluator for the National Association for Search and Rescue. Wow, that's really awesome. Welcome to the stage, Dr. Lum.
Hi, everybody. I know you're digesting from lunch. I appreciate you coming for my talk. So I want to start off by just saying that dogs are awesome. Done. No. And I know we're all at ITSEC, and you're like, why is she talking about dogs? Well, as the moderator mentioned, my background, in addition to my research and professional pursuits, I have been a canine handler for almost 15 years, and I've seen firsthand just why dogs are awesome. So as I've been doing a lot of teaming research as of the last 20 years, I've decided to kind of combine efforts here. Because what we know is that non-human entities are becoming the norm in teaming. It's not just going to be humans for the rest of eternity. We are incorporating more and more some kind of non-human entity, and more often than not, it's going to be something that is intelligent in some way. So with that, I just want to mention what makes a good team. I'm not going to try to consolidate 30, 40, 50 years of human teaming research, but it's out there. Some of my colleagues at ASU are pretty famous on teaming research, Nancy Cook, Jamie Gorman. I've done a bit of it as well. And what we know, what makes a good team is not necessarily that they're all experts. There's a pretty famous quote that says an expert team is not necessarily a team of experts. And what that means is that you can have an expertise in something and still suck as a team member. We've all experienced that, right? And so what does make a good team? Well, we know that good team members are trustworthy, that they're reliable, that we're able to coordinate and cooperate with them. The things I am most interested in are task interdependency. So it doesn't mean that every team member is dependent on each other for every little nuance of a particular mission, but they have to come together at some aspect or juncture in order to succeed as a team. Because good teams have a shared goal, whatever that shared goal is for team success. The component of team research that I am interested in the most is probably the communication aspect. So right now you're hearing me talk, and presumably you're understanding what I'm saying. I know you're probably thinking about dinner now instead of lunch, but assuming that you're paying attention, you're able to receive the message in the communication from the productive language that I am saying. But as we start incorporating more non-human team members into the team, that's where some of the breakdown might happen. Because anybody who's tried to communicate with a dog knows that some of it is just like Charlie Brown with the teachers, and it's like wah, 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 wah. And they don't really understand everything. We know from animal cognition research that dogs understand approximately 200 to 300 words, and it is better to talk in very short commands than it is to try to have a long dissertation communication with your dog. We do know that, and again, I'm going to focus on dogs, but this is human-animal teams as a whole. We know that there's lots of successful examples of other animals working as a team. So seals and dolphins, even rats and pigeons, horses, but I like dogs, and I've worked with dogs most, so I'm going to talk about dogs. So what we know about dogs in particular is that their sensory capabilities are far and away above what we can do. And that's why we use them in the first place. So again, animal researchers have discovered that dogs can smell a drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So that's parts per million or billion. And again, that's part of the reason why we use dogs in the first place, because their olfaction is far and above what we can do. They also can run faster, longer. They can do a lot of the things we can't. That is why we use dogs. And they're cute, and you can pet them, that's an aside. But they can do the things that we can't, both physically and from a sensory standpoint, and also from sometimes we use them for therapy, emotional, cognitive abilities. But they are used to supplement or augment the things we can do. That's why we use animals in a teaming standpoint. That is also, by the way, why we use robots, because they can go in places that we can't. As of right now, we can't go to Mars and walk on the surface. We can, but we shouldn't probably go in some of the more dangerous locations. That's why we have robots that can go through and in places that we can't, do the things that we can't. But back to the sort of communication language thing I mentioned earlier, both animals and robots don't communicate in the same way that humans communicate with each other. That's great, because that forces us to think about what the non-human team member is doing. And as an aside, there's a lot of back and forth on what constitutes a team in general. Is a team, is a dyad enough to be a team, or does it need to be more than two? Can a non-human entity even be a team member, or does it ever go above the label of tool? Now, that's outside of the scope of my talk, but it is an important distinction to make, and one that I'm going to argue that for our purposes right now, we're going to say that we are looking at teaming, not just the use of a tool. So again, why do we use animals, and why should we then port some of the things we know about human-animal teaming to create more successful models of human-robot teaming, and in particular human autonomous or AI robot teaming? Well, one, again, I mentioned the differing capabilities. So that's a positive. That's, again, why we use animals and robots. We know, especially on the dog front, that dogs have a mutual or co-evolution with us. So they have adapted to our abilities and what we can do with them in the same way that we've learned how to work with them. At the same time, now that AI, you can't get away from it, every booth here at ITSEC has something to do with AI. But now that we are really into the intelligent aspect of robotics, we are sort of evolving with them too. How can we and should we interact with them in order for the robot to understand what its task and goals are, and how we can work together? So how can I be a better team member for the robot, and how can I work with the robot for it to be a better team member with me, knowing that it might not be able to understand me in the same way that you're understanding me right now. So back to that sort of naturalistic language communication breakdown, that we can use the human-animal model of how successful human-animal teaming is doing it in order to port it to the human-robot team. I will also say that, again, the advantage of the human-animal team is that it has differing capabilities. I've said that a couple times. But it also can be a challenge, because I don't quite understand. Again, I've been doing this for 15 years as a dog handler. I'm on my third dog as a search and rescue handler. And I'm still amazed and don't quite understand all of the nuances of how my dog finds the missing person. I know that they do it. I know how overall they do it, but I don't know all of the compounds that they're smelling when they're trying to find them, what the cognitive abilities are as they're doing it. And frankly, I don't need to know, because my dog does its thing. I am in the supporting role or the supervisory role, making sure that they succeed, and we are working together in an interdependent nature. Similarly, do I really need to know how that AI robot is doing its thing? Well, from an ethical standpoint, we want to know, but we don't need to know necessarily all the nuances as long as it accomplishes its goal. The other sort of aspect of this is that I want to mention is the time to train. Now, we know that you don't just, even for therapy programs, service dog programs, they don't just match the human and the dog and say, go off and prosper. There's a training component to it. Even if the dogs are trained prior to being matched with the handler, there's still a learning or training period once they come together in order for the human to understand what they need to do in order to be a good human to the dog. Similarly, a lot of what we see in robotics is this sort of, let's just pair the human with the AI, whether it's a physical AI or a system or not, or a simulation. Let's just pair them together, it'll be fine. But no, there should be the expectation that there's some sort of time to train, time to adapt, time to learn how to be a successful team. And when I was about to give this talk, and I posted it on LinkedIn, someone said, well, what the major breakdown in this human-animal to human-robot is that animals, especially, again, we're talking about dogs, they have self-preservation, right? But robots don't necessarily do that. Well, I'm going to argue against that point. Now, of course, dogs have some level of self-preservation, but I've seen firsthand that working dogs that are trained on a specific task will go past the point where it is safe for them. And some of them, that have search and rescue dogs that have gone over to Turkey, they've passed out and even died from things like exhaustion because they are so driven, so motivated that something in their brains tend to turn off, and they are more likely to work past when they should. In a similar way, robots don't necessarily know when to stop, but they might have some level of self-preservation. If their battery is getting low, they might tell the human, we need to stop this mission. But it's ultimately our job as the human team member to be in that supervisory role and be able to say, we need to stop this mission because the other member is not doing well one way or the other. So that is a long-winded way of saying that there are a lot of complementary aspects to human-animal teaming that I think is going to be incredibly important as we start to look more at the autonomous nature, the intelligent nature of robots, and what we need to do in order to be successful human team members for them, to be able to understand what they need from us, to be able to have them understand what we need from them. And ultimately, there's just a lot of similar challenges, but also advantages and opportunities to using this sort of modeling as we are moving forward with more of these intelligent robotics. And so I got the thing. So I can talk about this for hours, but I have a whole 15, 20 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, feel free. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lam. At this time, we're gonna open it up for questions. So let me get my clicker.
I also know I pace a lot, so thanks for letting me be able to walk around.
So that's the QR code. If you have a question, you don't feel comfortable coming up to the mic, go ahead and put your question in. If not, if you want, there is a mic up there. You can ask your question at this time.
They're all in awe. No, I'm kidding.
I enjoyed it a lot. So what kind of dog do you have?
So one of the most interesting, it's a long-winded answer to your question, but I started with a black lab who I named Google, as in Google the search engine. Yeah, so I would say Google search, and he would go off and find the person. He was a black lab mix, and he was probably the easiest dog I've ever had to try to be my first introduction to search and rescue. And then I got my second dog. When I retired Google, I got my second dog. His name is Cash, so like the computer Cash. It's a running theme. And he is a Husky pit mix. And he was by far the hardest dog I ever had to train. So I went from very easy to very hard. So one of the lessons I learned, and actually it's important for a human-robot world, is that when you are, no two things are alike. No two dogs, even if they are programmed similarly, as we have more intelligent robots, they're going to differ in some way. So I had to change the way I handled my dog for my second dog. And now I learned that Cash was not the hardest dog. I have a third dog now. His name is Zeke, not computer themed. But I thought Cash was hard. Zeke, I had to learn how to be a different dog handler for him as well. So it's an important lesson that I learned that way also. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Feel free to come up to the mic. Oh, no, there he is.
He's coming.
Run.
So one of the, to the extent that I've been in this field, which is very light, part of the issue with human-robot teams is the notion of shared mental model, right? So
Yep.
the human understands what it is that the machine is thinking about, because the machine has been encoded to push information in a way that is, so you can't do that with a dog.
Right.
So do you basically have to, so how do you see that working? And like, 'cause the title says we're using it as a model for effective human AI robot teams, but it seems like that's one of the critical gaps, right? I can change my machine somewhat so that it modifies the way in which you're interacting with the human. But that's,
You can't change the way the animal, but you.
maybe you're about to say no, that's false.
But you can.
You can, okay.
I mean, to a certain extent, right? So, I mean, I'm never going to teach my dog to speak like a human, but there are ways that we train, especially for like search and rescue and other detection tasks, for the dog to tell me he found the missing person or the bomb or whatever it is. And so that's called the trained final response in the canine world. And so the dog will go over and sit and bark or whatever the gesturing is. And so that is sort of the way to bridge the gap of the dog's doing whatever the dog's doing, the dog found the thing and was able to tell me. Similarly, so that is a way to make sure that that happens. So in a robot world, obviously we can train it to be able to speak in a different way. I think that's kind of the gap there.
Great. I'm glad I inadvertently lobbed up that volleyball for you, so.
All right, I think
I think we have another question.
yeah.
One last question. Have you worked with a robot as a search
Yes.
vehicle?
I have done a little bit on the UGV, the ground vehicle side of things. I will say that they are not particularly good at wilderness search and rescue because of all of the various hazards that are out there. It's been much more successful on the drone UAV side of things because the UAV can go above, look for the missing person. We are ground pounders. The dog is using its nose. I'm using my vision and my in theory, superior cognition and be able to figure out where the person might be. And so I have a whole sideline of research that has to do with what's called super teaming, which is the idea that, going back to what Brian asked about sort of the shared mental models or thing, but when you have three capabilities that are distinct like that, and they're able to come together, they become this like superhero group that cuts the time in significant amount. All of the resources, everything is much better when you're able to use the unique capabilities of those particular three entities. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Oh, go ahead.
Diego Torres from Italy. What are the biggest challenges in translating non-verbal cues from a human-animal interaction into effective human-robot communication?
I think it's just understanding what those cues are. And that is one of the biggest, I'm working on, another side project where we're trying to incorporate AI into gesture recognition for human-animal teams. Because the hardest thing is to teach the human what the dog is doing and what the dog is trying to do, trying to tell them. And so if we can have, there are certain things like changes of behavior, like the dog speeding up and slowing down, or lots of those things. So if we can, through the use of technology, create sort of a database of what are these gestures, abilities, changes of behavior, we can also do that for sort of the robotic side of things. So when the robot is out of sight or the animal's out of sight, what is it doing? Can we have the technology in order to be able to translate it to the human? The answer is yes, but it's kind of in its infancy, the best way to do that. Okay. Yeah.
I'll ask from here. It's more interested in the emotional side of things. So typically, human and dog have a strong emotional bond.
Yep.
How's that going to translate to a machine like a dog, robot, etc.?
So some of the research out there has shown that both for humans and animals, you're more likely to forgive a human or a robot or an animal if they do something wrong. You're more likely to have the ability to trust again, trust remediation. And so that kind of pairs into the emotional attachment. I'll, of course, love my dog in ways that I don't love my car. But we also anthropomorphize even those of us who are hardcore and those that are in the military. There's lots of research that has shown that, like for EOD, so explosive ordnance detection robot handlers, that when that robot, if and when that robot gets blown up, the human does have some sort of negative emotional response, a grief response. So we still have emotions to non-living entities, just probably not to the same extent that we do the animal. So that's kind of what can we do to either shorten the amount of emotional response we have to the animal, or can we make it bigger for the human and the robot if the task or the particular scenario is appropriate for that? There are some times that you don't want to have the emotional response. And that's why a lot of military dog handlers, police dog handlers, the dogs are considered more tools, meaning they don't go home at the end of the night with the human. They get picked up from the kennel, they go and do their job, and they get put back in the kennel outside of training. And that's to lessen that emotional feedback that you get. So I think that's probably how you would do that, or why there's increased or decreased emotional response to both an animal and a robot.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for the question. Thank you, Dr. Blum.
Thank you.
That was very, very fascinating. So let's give her a round of applause.